Vaccines require years of research and testing before they can be made available for mass usage. Scientists across the world are racing to produce a safe and effective coronavirus vaccine by next year. Researchers are testing 48 vaccines in clinical trials on humans. The first vaccine safety trials in humans started in March, and now 10 or 11 have reached the final stage of testing. Some of them are giving us some good news as well. On Monday, we heard that AstraZeneca claimed their vaccine is safe for elderly, and Johnson & Johnson said that their vaccine might be available for emergency use in January. Let's take a look at what's the situation across the world as far as vaccine candidates is concerned. Now, Oxford vaccine in UK with AstraZeneca, it is being claimed that it is producing good response. It is also safe for elderly. And there is a media report in Sun newspaper that says that a major UK hospital has been told to prepare to receive the vaccine in November. Now, Johnson & Johnson in USA has reached phase 3 trial with their vaccine. About 60,000 participants are there in that phase 3 trial, and it will be available for emergency use in January is what the company is saying. Now, China has Sinovac vaccine, which already got an emergency approval in July for limited use. But now, residents of Shaoxing City can apply for an online application and ask for the vaccine. They may not be priority group, but they can still apply for it. Now, if you take a look at India, we have our very own Bharat Biotech vaccine, and the approval for phase 3 trial has come through. 28,500 participants above the age of 18 will be taking part in this phase 3 trial. Now, this is just a little overview of the vaccine candidates, but what exactly is happening in this vaccine race? To talk about that, we have Dr. Jerome Kim. He's Director General, International Vaccine Institute. Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, for speaking with us. Now, some positive news is coming in from some corners of the world, especially from AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson, saying there that they can make it available by January. How do you see this vaccine race, or do you feel positive about a vaccine by January?
Yes, so I think that we will have the results from what we call an interim analysis, from a peek at the data for many of the vaccines in November and December, and maybe even in January. What that might tell you is that the vaccine is safe and effective. It won't necessarily be sufficient data, for instance, for the US FDA to consider licensure. I mean, it may be if the data are so overwhelmingly positive, but it's most likely that the US FDA will grant emergency use authorization, which is slightly different from formal licensing approval. So I think, we can expect data. It's been an amazing, 12-month sprint to get to this point. But, there are still 2 huge hurdles that have to be overcome.
Dr. Kim, if you're talking about the fact that we might have the results, but it might not be sufficient to actually give them full approval. But we do have certain vaccines which have limited approval right now. And we've heard reports from China where people are paying $60, lining up to get that vaccine. So maybe people are more impatient than the companies.
And so this is an important difference, I think, in the emergency use laws in different countries. So both the Russians and the Chinese have issued emergency use approvals for vaccines that have not been shown to be safe or effective. That might not happen in other countries, but as you know, vaccine hesitancy is a major problem for many of the countries in North America and Europe. And being able to assure people that a vaccine protects against infection or disease and is safe is really a very, very important part of what the regulatory authorities consider to be their primary responsibility. Now, it's not the same in every country. So the US FDA position, the EMA position, WHO's position on efficacy, I think, is pretty clear. However, Chinese companies are able to offer their products right now on emergency use. And It's perfectly consistent and legal for them to do that. Many other countries prefer to wait until there's proof that the vaccines protect and are safe.
Right. Dr. Kim, if other countries wish to import these vaccines that have limited approval, what is your opinion on that? Because we did see a little bit of politics happening over the Chinese vaccine in Brazil. So what if these countries, some of them want to import that vaccine?
So there is no reason why a country under its own authority can approve a vaccine that hasn't been shown to be safe or effective. But then the country incurs the risk that the vaccine may have unseen side effects, may have certain problems that develop 6 months, a year after vaccinations start, or even 2 months, because often we won't have enough information to really be sure that we even have 2 months worth of safety data on the average. So again, there are lots of additional concerns. The United Arab Emirates, for instance, has approved the Sinopharm, the CNBG vaccine, for use in healthcare workers. Again, without any evidence that it actually protects. And again, without any evidence that it hurts. So each country has to make its own risk assessment. And, I don't think that the WHO or other groups are going to necessarily stand in the way of what is a responsibility of a government, right, and what it considers to be its responsibility to its people.
Right. Dr. Kim, I just have a minute, but I would like to ask you this question. Do you think drug regulators across the world can sometimes get affected by politics and get swayed?
So, I would like to say no, but as you know, governments are complex and are subject to public opinion. And we try to insulate the organizations, like the FDA or the EMA, from politics, because we want our vaccines to be safe and effective from a medical and scientific perspective, based on the data that are generated during a clinical trial that is well controlled and of high quality. In the absence of those data, it's sometimes difficult. And even the best companies have had products that have ended up not protecting. Absolutely. And some of them have had to issue slight corrections on the use of the vaccine because a bit later, a year or 2 or 3 years into the after vaccination, they right. found some issues. So again, different countries have regulatory regimes of different types for a reason. And, many of the major regulatory authorities consider safety and efficacy of vaccines to be something that they need to guarantee to the people of the country.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, for joining in. We do hope that none of these regulators fall under political pressure, and the vaccine that we get is actually effective and safe as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Now, moving on to other news, new COVID-19 cases reported today in India was 36,370. This is the lowest number of daily cases India has seen since mid-July. July 18th was the last time India reported less than 36,000 cases. Continuing with the downward trend in cases, India recorded an average of 55,000 daily COVID cases last week against the weekly average of 90,000 during the peak in September. Now, India has been testing an average of 8 to 9 lakh people every day for the past month. This is according to the government data. But the question is, how effective or dependable are these tests? As the data sourced by NDTV from some states shows the dismal state of RT-PCR testing against the more favored antigen tests, that the antigen test, which has a high tendency to give incorrect results. Now, we are showing you the states that have a high percentage of RT-PCR tests. These are the states that are choosing to do more of this gold standard test than the other antigen tests: Maharashtra, Punjab, Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Now, Tamil Nadu has 100% RT-PCR test, which is a good practice. But now let's take a look at those states that have a low percentage of RT-PCR test. These are the states that we're going to show you have very low testing of RT-PCR test. Now, if you look at the numbers of Bihar, UP and Delhi, it is surprising that their RT-PCR testing is so low. And let me tell you, these numbers are very difficult to come by. The government does not give you numbers or breakup. It just gives you a random, a very vague percentage that it just says, oh, we are doing 1/3 tests as RT-PCR tests. It is very, very opaque as far as the governments of these states are concerned. Now, to talk about this, I have Dr. Hemant Deshmukh, Joining me, he's the Dean of KM Hospital from Mumbai. Thank you very much, Dr. Deshmukh. Dr. Deshmukh, when I look at the number 36,000, you know, it's a very good number. It feels like a good news, but I do worry when I look at the RT-PCR testing numbers in our country. How do you see these numbers when you look through the lens of testing strategy in India?
When we talk about testing strategy within India as well as Maharashtra or Mumbai, the healthcare sector in Mumbai is looked after the MCGM, and MCGM looks after all the testing, the isolation, the quarantine facility. So the health of Mumbai is in the hands of the Municipal Corporation of Greater Mumbai. And when we talk about RT-PCR versus COVID testing, that is rapid antigen test or RAT, I definitely want to tell you that the percentage of RAT is almost 30% in Bombay also. And we are doing this RAT testing or rapid antigen testing in or individuals who are asymptomatic. These are also patients who come as a pre-operative health checkup within the corporation hospitals, and only in the private sector where the patients are for surgery or for an emergency, these are tested by RT-PCR. Now, the asymptomatic patients who are being tested by RAT, most of them are asymptomatic, and hence they need not undergo RT-PCR. So every state or every city or every corporation has to have a small balance between the percentage of RT-PCR versus the RAT test.
But Dr. Deshmukh,
now,
in your opinion,
Dr.
Deshmukh, in your opinion, what is that balance? Because we also see 90% of antigen testing and 10% of RT-PCR in some states, which is shocking.
Yeah. The whole idea to stop a pandemic is just to increase the number of testing. And when I say to increase the number of testing, it definitely means the gold standard. It is RT-PCR. Now, most of the states which are not doing high numbers of RT-PCR are probably tied down financial issues. And the more they want to test with rapid antigen tests, they are trying to segregate where the false negative are also likely to be very high. And hence the numbers in these states are definitely coming lesser to a larger extent. And when Bombay or Maharashtra is doing more RT-PCR, the numbers are definitely showing what the entire importance of RT-PCR is.
Right. Dr. Deshmukh, this is of course speculation, but because we don't have hard data, because states and state governments are not giving it to us, you know, states that have really high population like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, they have positivity rate of 2% and 3% right now. I mean, anybody who's been following coronavirus and its growth would look at it with a little bit of, you know, it's difficult to swallow. What do you think a state like that with such high population, what should be their percentage of RT-PCR testing?
I think when you're talking about states like Bihar or Uttar Pradesh, the percentage of RT-PCR should definitely 70%, which is a huge number. It's a huge financial burden to the exchequer also. If you test more, I think you will be able to segregate, isolate, quarantine a lot of population, and it's this RT-PCR test, golden test, which will segregate patients and reduce the mortality as well as the positivity amongst the people or the population of that particular state.
Right. Thank you very much, Doctor, for answering these questions. We do understand it is a financial burden for the states, but currently we have to look out for other resource, which is the human resource. And if we don't test, we will not be able to control this pandemic effectively. Thank you very much, Doctor, for speaking with NDTV. We're going to take a very quick break now. And when we come back, Dr. Ajay Agarwal joins us to answer your questions. Welcome back, and now it's time to answer your questions. And Dr. Ajay Agarwal joins us. He's the Director of Internal Medicine of Fortis Hospital. Thank you very much, Dr. Agarwal. Let's take the first question, which Ayush Jamwal has sent us.
Hello, myself Ayushi. I am from Lucknow. So my question is, schools will be opening. How safe it is if we live with our grandparents?
Okay, so this is Ayushi with us right now. Dr. Agarwal, if you heard, basically she was asking about schools reopening, and if she has older grandparents living with her. Is it safe?
No. You see, once the school reopens and the children go to the school and they carry the virus home, because many times they may be asymptomatic and they are living with the grandparents, that will definitely increase the chances of them giving the infection to their grandparents. Not only that, there will be the crowding and nobody knows who amongst those are asymptomatic carriers, because symptoms are not necessary. In the school, we can screen for the fever, etc. But once the patient person, for example, child is not having any of those, and he comes to the school, and of course he is asymptomatic, and nobody knows whether he's carrier or not, and then the chances of infection becomes high. And similarly, when he takes another child takes that infection home, and the disease may increase. I do not know this is a wise idea that to reopen the school.
Okay. Let's take our next question sent by Ayush this time.
My name is Ayush Jamwal and I am from Himachal Pradesh. My question is, how will winter affect the coronavirus, and is that true that small children are not affected by the coronavirus?
Doctor.
There have been speculations about the role of temperature on the growth of coronavirus epidemic. If we see, it all started in December, and when it was high, we thought that the summers might decrease it, but it really didn't happen so, and it happened all across the globe, whether it was hot and humid or it was cold country. But now, in the Europe, we are finding the resurge with the onset of the winter and when the temperature has decreased. We are seeing in UK, we are seeing in all the European countries, etc. So might be with decreasing the temperature, when the winter sets in, we might be getting more and more patients. This is what we are thinking right now as doctors.
Right. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, Doctor, thank you very much for answering these questions. So it's winters and there might be a increase in the numbers as we've seen in the European countries as well, as Doctor was telling us.